Merry-Go-Round Storytelling presents Funny Tales and Fairy Tales with Amanda Kane-Smith. Hello, I'm Amanda, and this week on Funny Tales and Fairy Tales, I'm going to tell you the story of Little Red Riding Hood and the Wolf. So make yourself comfy and let's see where today's story will take you. What's your favourite thing to wear? Some people have a favourite t-shirt. Some people have a favourite hat. There was once a girl who had a favourite cloak. It was red with a big hood, and she loved it so much she wore it everywhere. In fact, she wore it so often that people began to call her Little Red Riding Hood. But she didn't mind. She rather liked the name. One day, Little Red Riding Hood's mother asked her to visit her grandmother who lived in a little house in the woods. Little Red Riding Hood was very excited because it was the first time her mother had let her go on her own. They fetched a basket and filled it with some special things. A homemade cake, a bottle of grandmother's favourite beer, and a big bowl of cherries. Grandmother loved cherries. Then Little Red Riding Hood put on her cloak, picked up the basket, and began to skip to Grandmother's house. "Stay on the path and don't talk to any strangers," called her mother after her. "I won't," she called back, and with that she skipped into the wood. It was a very warm day and a very long way to Grandmother's house. Little Red Riding Hood soon began to feel hot and tired. She really wanted to sit down and have a little rest, but the path was all hard and stony, so she looked around for somewhere else to sit. And through the trees she saw a beautiful big oak tree with a soft grassy bank underneath. The perfect place to rest, she thought. Now, she knew that she was not supposed to leave the path, but it looked so comfy and cool under the tree that she just skipped off and sat underneath it. As she sat there, she felt her tummy begin to rumble. So she looked in her basket, and there she saw the cherries. Now, she knew she was not supposed to eat the cherries, but they looked so delicious and juicy. She picked one up and popped it into her mouth. "Delicious," she said as she chewed it, and couldn't resist eating another one. And another. And another, until she realised she'd eaten all the cherries. Oops, she thought. It was so relaxing eating cherries under the tree that she soon began to feel a little sleepy. Now, she knew she was supposed to go straight to Grandmother's house, but she felt so happy and comfortable under the tree that she just let her eyes close and soon fell fast asleep. All of a sudden, she felt a tickle on the end of her nose, which woke her up. And to her horror, she found herself nose to nose with a wolf. And he had definitely not cleaned his teeth recently. The wolf's brown eyes were staring at her. Little Red Riding Hood jumped up and was about to run away when the wolf said, "I'm terribly sorry I startled you. I was only trying to see if you were all right. I thought you may be unwell."
"Oh, no, I'm fine, thank you," said Little Red Riding Hood. "I'm on my way to Grandmother's house. I must have fallen asleep."
"Grandmother, you say?" inquired the wolf. "Is it the grandmother who lives in the town?" He was a very cunning wolf.
"Oh, no," said Little Red Riding Hood. "She lives in a little house by the lake where the conker trees are."
"Oh, of course, that grandmother," said the wolf, pretending he knew her. "Oh, yes, we've often had a little chat together. Well, I must be off. It was nice to have met you," he said. And with that, he was gone.
"Phew, that was close," she thought. "He was a funny old chap." She straightened her cloak, brushed off a couple of cherry stones which had got stuck to it, picked up her basket and strolled slowly back toward the path. The wolf, on the other hand, had begun to run as quickly as he could towards Grandmother's house. He was feeling very hungry and was planning to eat Grandmother and Little Red Riding Hood for his lunch. But to do that, he needed to get to Grandmother's house first. He knocked on the door. "Who is it?" asked Grandmother. "Only me," said the wolf, putting on a silly high voice. "Is that Little Red Riding Hood?" Yes," answered the wolf. He presumed that must be the little girl's name. She had been wearing a red cloak after all. Grandmother opened the door. But she was so surprised to see the wolf, she fainted. "Oh!" The wolf quickly picked her up and carried her to the wardrobe and put her inside. "I'll eat you later," he thought. Then he found one of Grandmother's nighties and a frilly bed cap in one of her drawers and put them on. The cap was a little tight and his ears didn't quite fit inside, so he decided to put on some of Grandmother's lipstick to take the attention away from them. Then he jumped into Grandmother's bed, pulled the covers over himself, and waited. He didn't have to wait very long before there was a knock on the door. "Who is it?" he said in his best grandmother voice. "It's only me, Little Red Riding Hood. Can I come in?" "Yes," said the wolf. Little Red Riding Hood skipped inside and then stopped and stared. Grandmother seemed hairier than she remembered. Then she noticed her round brown eyes. "Those round brown eyes look familiar," she thought. "Oh, Grandmother, what big eyes you have," she said. "All the better to see you with, my dear," replied the wolf. Then she noticed his big furry ears, which were now poking out of the side of his hat. "Oh, Grandmother, what big ears you have," she said. "All the better to hear you with, my dear," replied the wolf. Then Little Red Riding Hood noticed the lipstick. "Extraordinary," she thought, "and definitely not the right colour for her." The wolf grinned at her. "Oh dear," thought Little Red Riding Hood, "most of the lipstick is on her teeth.
"Oh, grandmother, what big teeth you have," she said. Well, the wolf couldn't wait any longer, so in his own wolf voice he said, "All the better to eat you with, my dear." And he jumped out of bed, ready to gobble her up. And he would have done so too, had Little Red Riding Hood not thought very quickly and bashed him over the head with her basket. "Take that," she said, and the wolf dropped to the floor. "Oh, oh!" he cried. Just at that moment, Grandmother had started to wake up. In his rush, the wolf had forgotten to lock the wardrobe door, so hearing the disturbance, Grandmother was able to fling it open and rush to see what was going on. Well, she was very surprised to see Little Red Riding Hood standing there looking at a wolf in her house, and she was even more surprised to see the wolf was wearing her nightie and her bed hat. And was that her lipstick too, she thought? "Get out of my house, you bad wolf!" she shouted. The wolf was so surprised by the sudden turn of events that he stood up, holding his head, and did just that. He ran out of the house and disappeared into the wood. "Good riddance to you," Grandmother called after him. "And don't let me see you round here again, and you can keep the clothes." "Wow," thought Little Red Riding Hood. "My grandmother is amazing." Grandmother gave Little Red Riding Hood a big hug. "Well done you," she said. "That showed him." "Oh, what have you got in that basket?" Little Red Riding Hood gave her the basket, and although the cake was a little squashed, it was still perfectly eatable. Grandmother was thrilled. She took out the cake and the bottle of beer, which she then opened. It had got a little shaken up, so it frothed and fizzled as the top popped off. Grandmother poured herself a glass. "My favourite," she said. "Thank you." She then got a nice glass of juice for Little Red Riding Hood. She put the cake on the table with 2 little plates and some napkins, and they sat down to eat. It was delicious. "That's the last we'll be seeing of him," said Grandmother. And you know what? She was right. The wolf never did come back. And the next time Little Red Riding Hood visited Grandmother, she made sure she stuck to the path.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that story. Wasn't Granny great? I like the bit where she tells the wolf that he can keep the clothes. Now, Little Red Riding Hood is a very old fairy tale, and you might already know that the original endings were much more grisly than mine, with both Grandmother and Little Red Riding Hood being eaten by the wolf. Or maybe you know the later version where a woodcutter or a hunter comes along to rescue them and... Well, if you like grisly things, you'll have to read that version of the story to find out what happens next. Maybe you could write your own version of the story, and you could either choose to do an upbeat ending like mine, or a grim ending like the original versions. Then you could tell it to someone else. Well, next time on Funny Tales and Fairy Tales, I shall be telling you the story of the 3 Billy Goats Gruff. So until then, take care and happy storytelling. Thank you for listening. If you want to contact me,
You can email me at mgrstorytelling@gmail.com. I am on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter as @mgrstorytelling and Merry-Go-Round Storytelling on YouTube. You can find me on Podbean at podbean.com/funnytales and fairy tales. Or why not take a look at my website to see what other types of storytelling I get up to, which is www.merrygoroundstorytelling.co.uk. Happy storytelling, and I look forward to telling you another tale soon.